chapter 18, the last chapter of this book. After we're done, go home and celebrate. Don't invite me. Go and, I don't know what you should eat tumre and dolma or something like that. Not in that order. Eat dolma first and then tumre. Tachratha. So once we're done with this book, those who are online, the recordings for the blue book are already set. It's not going to be this interesting dynamic setting. It's going to be me sitting at my desk working through the blue book, and I'm going to be scrolling through the PDF mostly of this. So those of you who want to continue in class, I will continue with the blue book in class until everybody runs out, and then I'll stop. But I do want to say this. I'll work through the material in chapter 18. But once you get to this book, I've got some copies in there I can give you after class is done. The last page of this book, if you go to the very end, the inside of the back cover of the blue book has what I call Chaldean at a glance. And it has all the sort of grammatical stuff that I've been talking about. It has masculine, feminine endings, singular, plural of nouns and adjectives. It has pronouns, ana, ayat, ayat. It has the pronoun objective endings, I, uch, ach. It has the verbal endings, type A and type B. And it has verbal, what are called diagnostics. So how you build a present tense, a future tense, a past tense with an object, an intensive, and a causative. So a lot of the stuff in this book is summarized on this back page. I want to say this now before we even begin the blue book, because there's a lot of grammar stuff even in the green book that we've gone through. This is a quick reference guide. Oh, what was that ending? You can just go back to this instead of flipping through the green book. As we go through the blue book, starting next week, you can always sort of keep referring to this back page. Okay, this was like, I woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, and the Holy Spirit made me put this into this book. So make use of it. It's a really useful tool. So that's there. Today, we are going to go through page 81. Looks like I'm going to be naming some animals, which is fun. And we're going to talk about feelings, which is weird. And then we're going to do the verb to do. And it looks like we're going to do the present tense, the future tense, and the past tense, the simple past tense. Okay? So that's going to be interesting. We're going to actually pick one verb and look at 3 different tenses of the same verb. That'll be instructive, I think. Okay? You may have noticed in the last chapter that the present tense of the verb to want, kibben, right, begins with a kap. This letter is at the beginning of all present tense verbs, and it's the telltale sign that you're looking at the present tense. Letters like this, letters or combinations of letters like this, are called, I'm calling them tense indicators. So you shouldn't be surprised to see a kap at the beginning of the present tense of the verb to do. So again, last week I used this term. A kap is diagnostic. So when a letter is, it tells you that that it's going to be a certain tense. I'm going to call this a diagnostic kap, and it's going to be the present tense. When it's at the beginning of a verb. Please do not think that every single time you see a kap anywhere in any word, somehow that means that, no. If you see the noun kalba, that doesn't mean dogs only exist in the present tense and there were no dogs before today. Okay? The letter kap, when it's at the beginning of a verb, when it's before a verbal root, indicates that the verb that follows it is in the present tense. Now, remember, most verbs have how many root letters? 3. Most have 3 root letters. So you're going to see a kap, then you're going to see 3 root letters. I'll make them boxes. Box, box, box. A kap, 3 root letters most of the time. And then the type A endings. Type A endings. So this example today, the root letters of to do are what is it? Beth and Deleth. Okay? This is a very badly written I. Okay? So these root letters, when you put these three root letters in this order into these boxes, you get the verb to do. When you put a kap before them, you get the present tense of to do. When you put the type A endings at the end of it, depending on the ending, you get I am doing. You are doing. You see how this kind of works out? So let's work through a couple examples. So, kap. Sorry. So here's this word. Now we have an entire word. We have this word, k'odhin. K'odhin. Let's say you're reading and you see this set of letters, this word. How do you break it down? Well, you know that the kap is diagnostic of the present tense. You know this ending, k'odhin, the type A endings, this means I. I. And then now, what you have left is this root, these three letters. Awad. What you do then is, this is the important part, this root part of the word is what you look up in a dictionary. You cannot look up k'odhin in a dictionary. There is no dictionary on the face of the earth in any Semitic language where you can just look up every single word. That doesn't exist. Not in Hebrew, not in Akkadian, not in Arabic, not in any dialect of Aramaic. The only thing you can look up in dictionaries, only verbs you can look up in dictionaries are the roots. So if you don't know how to find the root, you cannot look up a word. So that's why I'm really stressing this point. This is how you find the root. The kap is not part of the root. You drop that. The nun at the end is not part of the root. You drop that. What's left, most of the time 3 letters, that's going to be the root. This is what you look up. Now, what is less important are the vowels that are around the root. You have this vowel and you have this vowel. That's less important. What's very unimportant, even less important than that, is whether these letters are softened. That doesn't matter at all for looking it up. There is not one single case where awad, awid, means one thing, and then awid somehow means something else. Or abid means, no. Whether it's softened or not, the root is the root. So the thing to pay attention to is not the letters being softened or hardened, and not the vowels. It is just the basic root letters. That's what you're going to look up. Once you look it up, you're going to find out that this means to do. So that means, k'odhin means I do in the present tense. So far, so good? Now, by the way, I am masculine. Because if you want to say I feminine, you would say k'odhin. Right? Let's go back to this chart. Everyone repeat after me. K'odhin. K'odhin. Let me address something. In both spoken Chaldean and in classical Syriac, like the old language, you may pronounce the vowel on the root letter. You can say, or on the kap. You can say k'odhin. Everyone say k'odhin. Or you can say k'odhin. Everyone hear the difference? K'odhin. You can pronounce it as it's written on the ayah. Perfectly fine to do that. Or you can move the vowel to the kap. Everyone say k'odhin. Everyone say k'odhin. Slight difference. Okay? Please do not rush to your parish priest and say, Father, this Shemasha said k'odhin and it's written k'odhin. Do you think Mass is invalid now because somebody did a reading and said it that way? Yeah, I know some of you think that way. It is perfectly fine either way. Okay? Now let's keep going. Everyone say k'odhit. K'odhat. K'awith. K'odha. K'odhuch. See, I switched. Now I'm pronouncing the vowel on the kap. K'odhutun. K'odhi. Good? A lot of flexibility in the pronunciation there. Nobody that I'm aware of, no village that I'm aware of, in the case of this verb, pronounces the a hard. Nobody really says ka'awith in spoken Chaldean. I don't know any village that does that. However, at the very end of this book, when it's just going to be like me and Marlo in this class, at the very end of this book, when we get into Gushma, into the old language, in the old language, you always pronounce this heavy. You will never soften the a in when you're pronouncing things. I know this is a poor guy. Okay, sorry. Let's do this again. Let's go through the conjugation again. Ko'adhin, ko'adhan, ko'adhit, ko'adhat, ka'with, ko'adha, ko'adhuch, ko'adhutun, ko'adhi. The verb to do happens to be fairly regular, which means the pattern that it exhibits applies to most verbs. So if you really pay attention and memorize this pattern, this is going to apply to lots and lots of verbs. There are going to be some, like I said, if there's an elep or a waw or a yod in the root, it's going to mess with things. Mostly it's going to move vowels around. We'll get to that in the blue book. We're going to have special chapters on each of these different weak verbs. And I'm going to call it vowel movement. Okay? Because that's the way it feels to deal with it. Okay? So, but most verbs, especially strong verbs, are going to follow this exact pattern that you find here, including the vowels, including these vowels. Okay? Again, my strong recommendation is do not worry at all about softening letters. Just learn that this root is awada. This is softened and this is softened basically all the time in Chaldean. I really don't think there's any pattern in when letters are softened and when they're not. Definitely not in Chaldean, and I actually think even in Gushma and Syriac, I don't think there's any patterns that are worth paying attention to. And the reason I'm saying this is that when people are learning Syriac in universities, they spend weeks and sometimes months memorizing rules about when you soften a letter. It's a total waste of time because the word means the same thing whether it's softened or not. And I don't see why they waste their time doing that. So that's my critique of the way they teach the old language in universities. I think it's just a waste of time. I actually think the same is true for Hebrew. And I think a lot of people waste their time when they're learning Hebrew for months. They should just get into learning the meaning, and who cares how it's pronounced, honestly. Is anybody going to speak to somebody else in Hebrew? Not the way they teach it in schools, because in Israel they pronounce it totally differently. So you're just wasting your time. All right, that's my opinion, whatever. Okay. So you should spend some time memorizing the endings that you see in the chart above, since they are found in a lot of places in the Chaldean language, especially verbs. And in this chart, they're called type A endings, the one at the end of this book. All right. In addition to the kap being the present tense indicator, it's worthwhile to learn, as this book comes to a close and you get ready to study the grammar in the next book, the future tense indicator, which is the particle, which means little part of a word, bid. So the future tense indicator is not a kap. Instead of a kap, you have this particle, this part of a word, bid. Okay? Now this is pronounced in different ways, as some people are already noticing. Sometimes you'll even hear this as a tau, whatever, something like that. Or sometimes you'll even hear the delef skipped. But let's start with this full particle. This indicates, is the diagnostic of the future tense. Okay, so let's look at the next page. This sound goes at the beginning of the word with the same endings as the present tense. So if you want to make a future tense, all you have to do is replace kap with bid. Everything else is the same. The root, if you want to say to do, it's the same root in the future tense, and all the endings are the same. It's type A endings as well. Why is that worth noting? Because some languages are against you. Chaldean is on your side. It wants to make things as easy as possible, believe it or not. Even though you're learning it, it's a strain, it's difficult to learn something. In Greek, there are many, many, many verbs in ancient Greek where the present tense has one root, and the future is a totally different word. It's just a new root that you just have to learn. Greek does not want you to learn it. Okay? Chaldean wants you to learn it. Semitic languages in general are fairly simple, and they want you to, they're welcoming to new learners. Okay? So let's go through this. Everyone say, bid-odhin. See? Everyone say, k'odhin. Bid-odhin. See? Bid-odhan. Bid-odhit. You will do, right? Bid-odhat. Bid-awith. Bid-odha. Bid-odhuch. Bid-odhutun. Bid-odhi. You see how simple that is? Even like the hardest part of writing these books is coming up with vocab for each chapter, like deciding which words to make people learn. This part is the easiest part of writing this book, because I just copy and paste the same table and I just replace kap with bid and I'm done. And I know it's perfect. I'm not going to have to touch it. And I just add the word will in English. This is a very, very simple part of the language. Now, there are alternate pronunciations. Once in a while, you'll hear people skip the deleth, and you'll just hear people say b'odhin. Everyone say b'odhin. And that's perfectly valid. And if you can say bid, or you can say just the bith. So bid is one future tense indicator, or just the bith. You will also hear the deleth pronounced as a tau. So you'll hear ptodhin. It's not that common, especially with this verb, but you'll hear it with other verbs where the deleth is pronounced super hard, as if it sounds like a tau. Okay? For example, if you want to say I will be, the root for be is hoa. Okay? So if you want to say I will be, you would say bid hawin. I would say bid hawin. But that's very often pronounced ptawin. I would say ptawin. Ptawin, when you stretch it out a little bit, means is really is bid hawin. Bid hawin. Good? We'll get into that. There's a whole chapter just on that verb in this book. Okay. So just like kap indicating the present tense, bid applies to all kinds of verbs, so it's something worth remembering. These tense indicators are really, really worth memorizing. And it's worth memorizing bid or b. Can both be used here. There's another way to formulate a future tense meaning, which has a chapter in this book. And I'm just going to say it now in case some of you are thinking about it. I just want to address it now, even though it's not in this book at all. In English, you can say, I will do, right? Everyone say, I will do. I will do. That's in English. You can also say, I am going to do. Everyone say, I am going to do. I am going to do. What is going called in English in that context? That's called a helper verb. Has anybody heard of a helper verb? So in some constructions in English, you actually have two different verbs, but one is helping the other to reach its meaning. So the main verb, and when you say I am going to do, the main verb is do. But going is another verb, but it's helping. But what does it mean, I am going to do? It means I will do. It's just really another future tense. Chaldean, exactly the same thing happens. Okay? And the verb for to go is izala. And instead of saying bid odhin, you will use a helper verb and say zilin odhin. Zilin odhin, I am going to do. Or just zi odhin. Have you ever heard that? Zi odhin? That's a little bit of a different construction of the future tense. But it's really two verbs going together. That's a helper verb version of the future tense. So zi is also kind of another future tense indicator. Everyone get that? We're going to go through it thoroughly in the Blue Book, but I wanted to mention that because if I were to say, well, how do you say I am going to? Maybe some of you, the first thing you thought was zi. This is a little bit more kind of precise. I am I will do. Zielen is I am going to. What's the difference in the meaning? Basically nothing, but I want you to be aware of it. Good? Okay. Lots of extra content today. We should make this paid content for the Chaldean language channel. You already have a good idea of how to make a past tense verb. But here's the past tense verb, the past tense of to do, just so you have a complete picture of how regular verbs work. Everyone say, withli, withluch, withlach, withle, withla, withlan, withlochun, withle. What's different here? Lots of things are different. The past tense does not have any diagnostic particle at the beginning. It doesn't have anything at the beginning to indicate that it's a past tense. So what you have is just the root, which is still, both of these are softened, with, and then you have, let me just say, so there's no indicator at the beginning, but what you have at the end is type B. Endings. The endings are different, are totally different. Type A is for present and future tense. Type B endings are for the past tense. See that? That's why you really need to memorize both sets of endings. Cool, huh? I like this part of the language. I really like verbs in Chaldean. I think they're really interesting. Now, these are not all of the tenses because you also have what's called the perfect tenses. The perfect tenses, the indicator for that is this particle, wa. So you can say, kodin, I do, and you can also say, kodinwa, I used to do. Right? You can say, bid'odhin, I will do, bid'odhinwa, I will have done. The future perfect, which is a disaster in any language. And you could also say withli, I did, and you could also say withwali, I had done. These are all tenses. Okay? And then there's the zielen. So the verb is a little more complicated than I'm saying here, but these are the basics. If you start with these, you'll be able to express lots and lots of things in language. Good? All right. Let's end our soap opera. And I'll just give you a spoiler alert. It ends real boring. It ends it's like a Coen Brothers movie. You know how Coen Brothers movies end and it's like not really an ending? And you're just like, what is going to happen now? You guys like Coen Brothers movies? No? You should watch them. They're good. Okay. All right, Miriam. We'll see how they're flirting today. Miriam says, Ma kawith dibba bnunta. Dawid says, Dibba k'achal la. The way we usually pronounce this, Dibba k'achal la. That's usually the way we stress it. Tanunta. Miriam says, Uma withle, Nimra, Ta'arya, Jihya. Wow, we get adjectives and everything. David says, Nimra, قطلة تأريا جهية. Miriam says وما بريلة بكثيثة كد دشل إلا فيلا. Maybe this is flirting. I don't know. David says كثيثة مثلة وديكا بخيل طالة. Oh yeah, that's definitely flirting. He's the rooster and she's the hen. ما بدأوذ كلبة إن خازيلة تقطوثة بسختة. كلبة بد بايش حمثانة وبد آرق بثرة. Miriam says, in qirda, gkhikle, il-tannina. So this is il, but you don't have to pronounce it. You just say il-tannina. Ma brele, Bgawe. David says, Imma b'imma, qadhle, bnura, ulappish, gachik. You see the kap is kind of swallowed there in that gemel. Lapishik gachik. What a lame ending to that soap opera. Feelings. If you're surprised, you are, everyone say bihita. That tau is not feminine, it's part of the root. Okay? So if you want to say she is surprised, you would say behitta. Everyone say behitta. So there's two taus if it's feminine. Everyone say jehya, which is how all of you feel, but not as much as me. Everyone say gija. That's how I feel most of the time, dizzy. Everyone say himthana. That's a good Aramaic way to say it, instead of asabi, which is the most Arabic sounding word I've ever heard in my life. Everyone say hashana. Suffering. Could even mean sad in a kind of intense way, right? I'm mourning, maybe. Everyone say kriha. Sick. Good Aramaic word for sick. Most other words we use for sick, marid is real strong Arabic, and then nasakh is actually Kurdish. Na-sah. It's actually Kurdish and Arabic. Na means not in Kurdish, and then sah means healthy in Arabic. Lasah is Arabic. La is not, and then sah is Arabic, yeah. So kriha is good Aramaic word that very few people use. Everyone say mri'a. Hurt. Mri'a. Everyone say nkhipa. Embarrassed. Everyone say iqa. Upset. Could also mean bored, actually. I hear people say iqa for bored a lot. Psicha. Happy. Psicha. I would say qhira. Sad. Everyone say shathana. Feverish. Let's learn some animals, and I'll let you guys move on with your lives. Arya, a lion. Batta, I like that word. I really like how that word sounds. That word sounds like a duck. It sounds like it means duck. Batta. Everyone say baqa, flea or a mosquito. Everyone say dewa, wolf. Dibba, bear or overweight person. Okay, all of your parents call you that because they're mean. Your parents are mean.
I know, they are.
Everyone say dabasha. Bee. Doesn't it sound like dusha? So a bee is the honey maker. That's what a bee is. Okay. Everyone say didhwa. Didhwa is a fly. This is actually a real precise difference. Didhwa is a fly, and a baqa is a mosquito or a gnat. The smaller one is a baqa. Didhwa is the bigger one. Okay. Dika, rooster. Zanzira is a blackbird. Khmara is a donkey or a kid that's misbehaving, right? Or khmarta is a female donkey, right? Yona, dove, right? Kalba is a dog. Yeah, or a real bad kid, right? And then when somebody calls you Bert Kalwe, it means a son of dogs. And then when your parents call you that, they're kind of insulting themselves. Kthetha, hen. Nunta. A lot of villages will say Nuna. Everyone say Nuna. So some villages, for some reason, call fish males. Some of them call them females. Everyone say Nimra. A tiger. Nishra. Eagle. That's a cool word. Aqobra. A rat. That's a good name to give somebody. Arnuwa. A rabbit. Everyone say Fila. Fila. An elephant or Pila. You can say Pila. Those are both perfectly fine. Paqqa. I like that word too, frog. That sounds like it means frog, doesn't it? Paqqa. Paqqa. Yeah. And the verb probably that this is related to is paqa'a, which means exploding. And frog's kind of like, you know what I mean? I think it's related. Everyone say qatutha. Or just qatu. Okay, as a cat. If you want to be really, really precise, I think qatu is cat and qatutha is kitten. I think that's what's going on there. But most people will kind of, I mean, just like you see a cat and like when you see a cat, you say, oh, kitty, right? It doesn't matter how old the cat is. Or if you could see a dog that's 17 years old with one blind eye and 3 legs, and you would say, oh, puppy. Okay, yeah. Everyone say qarjala. We've seen that before, a turtle. Qarjala. Qarda is a monkey. The word shadi is Arabic, I'm sorry to say. Tora, bull. Tawarta, cow. And then dragon is tanina. I like that word too. Do your homework, memorize your vocab. You are on your way to learning this language. Do some celebration. Now, at the end of this book, there are lots of little selections of reading to do. And I really encourage you to read as much as you can. And my biggest piece of advice is get a copy of the readings, the Gospels, something like that. There's copies around, and of something that you already know. And if you're reading the Gospel and you already know what it says, but you're reading it in Chaldean, that's a really good way to reinforce what you're learning with reading that you already know. However, I have bad news for you. Many people write Chaldean and spell words differently than this book. And I have referred to them as monkeys before. I apologize for that, but not really, because they're spelling things wrong. But most people spell things wrong, unfortunately. So a lot of the gospel books you're going to get a copy of, or St. Paul or Old Testament, whatever, they're not going to spell things in this way, but it will sound like these sound. So you'll figure it out. It's not that hard. It's just a little annoying. You'll roll your eyes and say, come on, but then you'll get back to it. Good? All right. Good to have you. See you next week. Bye, everybody online.